Hello! Okay, Creed 3. You've got Adonis Creed. He's been thriving in both his career and family life, but when a childhood friend and former boxing prodigy resurfaces, he finds himself confronting not only his past, but a former friend who has nothing to lose. This time it's directed by Michael B. Jordan, and I felt like he did a really good, solid job. You know, this is his directorial debut, and I felt like he did a fantastic job, to be honest with you. Along with his cinematographer, a Kramer. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce his surname, but again, the cinematography in this movie, the way in which it's directed by Michael B. Jordan, I thought it was very well done. It's very focused with some great visuals, which I felt amplified some of the more emotional character moments. For example, there's this scene in a changing room. I'm not going to say too much because this is spoiler free, but there is this scene in these changing rooms with Creed and Damian Anderson, played by Jonathan Majors, and there's this wall dividing the two characters. It's a simple shot, but it's so powerful down to the imagery within this shot and the performances as well. But there's just a few of these moments throughout the movie which also involves the use of lighting that I felt really just elevate this movie emotionally. You know, you've got these two friends where life took them in two different directions, and this is brought to life beautifully by Jordan's direction, the cinematography, but also the performances from Michael B. Jordan and Jonathan Majors. Jonathan Majors as Damian Anderson is simply fantastic in this movie. It's a performance where you just really buy into and believe in the character and what this character has gone through with his past. You know, Jonathan Majors' very nuanced performance brings this story to life beautifully, and you find yourself almost rooting for the character. He is the underdog in this story, and I just think, like previous movies, the previous Rocky movies, you can somewhat relate to this character and his character story to a degree. Michael Jordan as Adonis Creed is great. Again, really dug his performance. Like Jonathan Majors, you really sort of buy into him, his character and his story and what he's going through. They are the standouts in this movie in regards to performances. I really dug the way in which the fight scenes were shot in this movie. I felt like they were very immersive, very intense. I was on the edge of my seat. They gave me goosebumps. I just really dug the way in which these fight scenes were shot. Jordan has this obvious, distinct style to how he wanted to shoot these scenes. I feel they still retained the style from the previous movies, but Jordan adds his own visual stamp on these moments. You know, whether it be slow motion or how he moves the camera with sort of the fist. I just really dug it, and it felt different, it felt fresh, but it didn't feel too stylistic either, which I felt like it could have. I think it was just the right amount, and I was immersed into the moment. I think that's the most important thing. You know, it could have got to a point where maybe it was just too much slow motion. I felt like it was just the right amount. I felt every punch. It felt real, and I feel like this is where the Rocky movies and the Creed movies, it's one of the aspects that I felt like they've done really well, and it's when they film these moments, these fight scenes, they feel realistic, but with a slightly different visual style in this one. As I previously said, Michael Jordan obviously he wanted to sort of add his own stamp to these moments, and I felt like it worked, and Michael Jordan pulled it off. So I do have a couple of gripes with this movie, and one of those is I felt like we lost focus on Damian's story towards the end of the second act and into the third act. You know, it's this story full of anger and betrayal, and they do a good job with setting this up at the beginning during the first act and through Jonathan Majors' performance, but I feel like it's not quite as strong during the middle and third act. You know, it's retained through Majors' performance, but I feel maybe the final scene, you know, that final act, that final moment, which is great by the way, could have had more of an emotional clout. I feel like once a certain fight during the second act is done with, we really lose that weight and focus to the character's story a little, his motivations. And I feel like they just really wanted to get to the final fight. And that's how it kind of felt. And maybe I just needed a little bit more connective tissue between the characters of Creed and Damien, and I just felt like they really lost focus on that, and I felt like they lost a lot of focus on Damien's journey, and as a result, for me anyway, personally, you end up no longer knowing who to root for, and I really felt that. And like I previously said, you end up really losing that emotional clout that I felt like the final moment of, that final scene in the third act really needed, and it's as a result of losing focus on that character's story and journey. There is focus on Creed's relationship with his daughter, and I really like that, but it doesn't really go anywhere. There's potential for a fourth Creed movie. There are a few plot threads, like in the previous two movies, that I just feel like they don't really go anywhere with. I really dug the score, this time by Joseph Shirley. When I discovered that Ludwig Göransson, I think that's how you pronounce his name, who composed the previous two movies, when I discovered that he wasn't returning to score Creed 3, I was a little bit like, oh no. But I think Joseph Shirley did a fantastic job, and he really injected this sort of new flavour into the movie while retaining those familiar themes, and he really added some epic clout to some of those bigger moments. And you've got that iconic theme that they play during the third act, and I just liked that sort of different take on it, a more orchestral take on it. It was nice, it was different. So do you feel Stallone's absence? I didn't, to be honest with you. I think how they ended Creed 2 with Stallone's character was perfect, to be honest with you. And I don't think or feel the story really needed him. Would I have liked him in Creed 3? Yes, of course. But I'm sure they've got plenty of story left. And I just liked how they ended with these characters' journeys in the second movie. And I just really didn't think we needed the Rocky character for this one. He's mentioned, and that's it. But did we need him for this story? No, it worked without him. I'm not a massive fan of the Rocky franchise. I'm not a fan of boxing, to be honest with you. But these movies for me are more than just boxing movies. They're a lot deeper, and that's what I really appreciate about them. They explore, people taking on these challenges in life, coming from nothing. And there is something in these movies that I think a lot of people, or most people, can relate to. I know I can. And, I feel like they're very motivational and universal when it comes to these stories. And I feel like, especially with the Creed movies, they have told these stories really, really well. So yeah, I enjoyed Creed 3. Great fight scenes, very immersive, very intense. And that's what you really want with these experiences, with the cinema experience, really. You've got some really great visuals, great performances, with an emotional anchor at its core, like the previous movies. But it doesn't get bogged down by it. You feel good after these films, and especially Creed 3. You may tear up at the odd moment. There was a moment in each one of these films, to be honest with you, where it sort of just grabs you out of nowhere, and it's like you find yourself tearing up. But once it's all done, you just feel good. I liked Creed 3. It's not quite as good as the first, but it's pretty close, with Jonathan Majors' character and story being one of the major highlights for me. I just wished they had focused in more on that pain and motivation of the character. That was one of the downsides for me. It's unfortunate because the movie does have this big heart at its core, this emotional anchor, but unfortunately they just don't really maintain it, and so you lose that emotional clout during the third act when you really need it. But the overall experience and how this movie was crafted, you just can't help, well, for me anyway, just help enjoy it. I was immersed, I was at the edge of my seat, I just really dug what Michael Jordan did with the fight scenes and his sort of the use of the camera, the cinematography. It was an enjoyable, immersive experience. So yeah, you know, it's not a perfect movie. I did have certain issues with it, but it wasn't enough to take away from the overall enjoyment. So yeah, they are my thoughts on Creed 3, and I will be giving Creed 3 a 7.5 out of 10. They are my thoughts on Creed 3. What did you think? Please let me know below and let's get a discussion going. If you've made it this far into the video, then thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. If you want to see future reviews from a rambling Welsh geek, then please hit that subscribe button. It would mean an awful lot. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it, and I'll be seeing you soon.